Hi, in this session we're going to look at how to get the most from the camera on your smartphone, and you might be surprised to find it's got some really great features. You may already know how to use some of the features that I'm going to talk about now, but if you don't, just look up your phone model online and find out that way. There's usually a quick way to launch the camera even when it's locked, and that can come in really handy for those spontaneous shots in restaurants or at food markets and situations like that. And does your phone let you use the volume controls to fire the shutter? This comes in really handy. It means that you can hold the phone steady in both hands, and it can also make it a little quicker in certain situations to activate the shutter button too. And work out how to switch the grid lines on and leave them on all the time. They're so helpful with improving your composition and making sure that all of your shots are straight. All of my food photography is done using available light and not with flash. This is because I find flash really quite harsh. It flattens the images, makes them look quite 2D, and can result in quite a yellowy orange colour cast and some weird shadows. The available light, what I mean by that, will be either daylight or the ambient light in a room from lamps and things like that. The self timer is really useful for including yourself or your hands in the shot, and this is a great thing to do because it suggests human interaction and creates a really nice story. You can usually set the timer for 2 seconds or maybe 5 or 10 depending on your phone, and there might even be an option to take several shots at once. If you're using your own hands in the image, then you'll obviously need something to hold the phone in position over the shot. You can buy purpose-made angle poise stands that have got a phone holder attached, but I've already got a tripod with an overhead arm for my main camera, so I just bought a phone holder that screws directly onto my tripod head. If you do want to get something, it would be worth doing a search online using search terms like phone tripod for flat lays or overhead shots. Focusing with a phone might seem really straightforward, but if you want to ensure your image is sharp exactly where you want it to be, so on the main focal point of your image, you need to tap on the screen first rather than on the shutter button. Select the most important part of your image, tap on it and then tap the shutter button. And hold your phone as steady as possible. Sometimes your image might look foggy or blurred because the lens is dirty, so you need to clean it every now and again with a soft cloth or lens wipe. In the previous session, we looked at why soft focus backgrounds like the one in this shot are so desirable in photographs. Admittedly, it is easier to achieve them with a decent camera and lens, but if you know what you're doing, you can do a decent job with a phone. The more recent iPhones have got the portrait feature, which does a great job of simulating a blurred background. And other phones might offer ways to do this, so it's worth checking online if you're not sure if your phone can do it or not. Alternatively, you can try putting your phone very close to the subject, as this will usually make the background blurred, and it's worked very well in this shot. The closer you position your phone to the subject, the more the background will blur. So have a little play and experiment and see what your lens on your phone can do. For close-up shots and shots with a soft focus background, it's even more important that you focus accurately by tapping the screen in the right spot. Blurring the background is great because it really makes your subject stand out and makes the background itself look very attractive. Remember sometimes to think about placing your subject off center to make the composition a little bit more creative. We're so used to zooming in with cameras that it seems like the natural thing to do with a phone as well, but unfortunately most phones don't perform very well when you zoom with them. And this is because they're using something called digital zoom, where the image is just being enlarged, making the picture quality very poor. So it's actually better not to zoom and to just crop the image later instead. However, if you've got a more recent iPhone, you may have something called optical zoom, which is proper zooming and does give good quality images. So it's worth checking your phone spec if you're not sure whether you've got optical zoom or not. And I guess it's not just iPhones that may have this feature as well. Phones have typically got very wide angle lenses to allow you to take wide scenes like landscapes, But the downside to this is that these wide angles can distort and stretch subjects. You can avoid this by being careful how you hold your phone. The purple glass shown here is a relatively straight and quite tall tumbler, but when it's shot from a 45-degree angle, it looks shorter and tapered. Wide-angle lenses also make objects nearest the camera seem much bigger than they really are in relation to other things in the shot. So here in the left-hand shot, the spoon looks very large when in fact it's designed to fit inside the jug. If you want to avoid any distortion, it's best to hold your phone at 90 degrees or directly overhead. For side-on shots like this one, if you hold the phone straight in front of the subject at 90 degrees, so that means the phone's vertical and very straight, and then you can use the grid lines to check that your subject and the horizon in the picture both look straight. And by the horizon, I mean perhaps a join between two kinds of backdrops or a work surface or something like that. If you want it to appear straight, then make sure it does by using the grid lines as a check. For flat lay shots like this one, you need to hold your phone as level as possible above the shot, and it's actually harder than you think, so take your time when you do it. Again, the grid lines can come in really handy to make sure that your phone is level. The camera on your phone doesn't always get it right, and sometimes it'll produce a picture that's not quite exposed like we want it to be. For example, it can look too bright or too dark, but you can actually adjust this before you press the shutter button. When you tap on the screen to focus, the phone also sets the exposure, and if at this point you don't like how it looks, you can just simply change it. When you tap on the screen, on the iPhone for example, you get a square and a sunshine symbol appear. Could be a different symbol on other phones. For example, I get a light bulb on my Samsung. So on the iPhone, you simply swipe up or down to brighten or darken the image once that sunshine symbol has appeared on the screen. There's a couple of situations when cameras really don't get the exposure right, and that's when they're faced with bright or dark scenes. And in this shot, the white icing has fooled the camera, and I've had to brighten it by adjusting the exposure. Similarly, the camera will want to brighten very dark images, and you'll need to darken the exposure to get the kind of look you want, as in this shot of asparagus on a very dark tray and dark backdrop. Even when I'm shooting with my phone, I always edit my images. I see editing as so important, and most of the time my images will benefit from some slight adjustments to really make them pop or to look exactly as I had them in mind. My phone particularly doesn't always get the colours right, and I can get this corrected when I edit. Cropping can also make a really big difference. I'll often zoom in on the finished image to see if it looks very slightly better cropped. And I use an excellent app called Snapseed, which we'll look at in a later lesson. Once you get to grips with all the different features of your phone's camera, I think you'll see that phones really do have a role to play in food photography. They're quick and convenient, but you can get some really great images out of them as well. I prefer to use mine at the moment for flat lays because I get such lovely results with my camera and a specific lens for blurred backgrounds.